Hello class 7 students, welcome to the history class and today we are going to start chapter 4 History of Indian Architecture. Learning objectives. Delhi Sultanate, the Mughal period, the regional kingdoms, the 18th century. Let's warm up. An image of Prithviraj Chauhan taken from a painting in Prithviraj Raso is given alongside. Now answer the following questions. A. Who wrote Prithviraj Raso? B. In which year was Prithviraj Chauhan born? C. What was the capital of Prithviraj Chauhan's kingdom? Application. Skills. In the 1st century CE, buildings were constructed to house a holy symbol of a certain deity, which could then be adorned with sculptural figures of them to remember their mythological adventures and provide a place for worshippers to leave offerings and perform rituals. As a god's home, the temple was considered a holy place where heaven and earth met, supplying them with a magnificent palace. Temple architecture has a long history in India. It has developed in all regions of the country. Despite the fact that the style's roots are the same, there is a significant distinction and variation in architectural styles in temple architecture. This variation is primarily due to India's geographical, climatic, racial, ethnic, and historical diversity. There are three broad styles of Indian temple architecture: Nagara, northern style; Vesara, mixed style; and Dravida, southern style. Each of these types has its own distinct cultural influences and lineages. Hindu temple architecture represents a fusion of art, dharmic ideas, convictions, traditions, and the Hindu way of life. Answer the following questions. A. Why were the houses of the 1st century CE constructed? B. What is the main reason of variation in temple architecture? C. What are the three broad styles of Indian architecture? Now answer these questions by yourself. The establishment of the Delhi Sultanate towards the beginning of the 13th century marked a new phase in the cultural development of India. The Turks brought Arab and Persian culture with them, which intermingled with the local Indian traditions. This cultural synthesis further increased with the coming of the Mughals. This intermixing of the cultural traditions was seen in the monuments, paintings, literature, and music of medieval India. Thus, the interaction of the Turks with the Indians resulted in the development of a new enriched culture. Delhi Sultanate. The establishment of Delhi Sultanate in the 13th century marked a new phase in architecture of India. One of the first requirements of the new rulers was house to live in and the places of worship. The first mosque built by them was the Quwwatul Islam Mosque near the Qutub Minar in Delhi. This is the image of Quwwatul Islam Mosque. In these buildings, the Delhi Sultans used arch and dome on a large scale. The style of decoration used on these arches is very interesting. No human or animal figures were used since it was considered un-Islamic to do so. Instead, they used geometrical and floral designs and panels with verses from Quran inscribed on them. The construction of the arch and the dome needed strong cement, otherwise the stones could not be held in place. So the Turks used fine quality mortar in their buildings. Thus, new architectural styles and use of mortar became widespread in North India with the arrival of the Delhi Sultans. In this pair of decoration, they used geometrical and floral designs, combining them with panels containing verses from the Quran. They also freely borrowed Hindu motifs such as swastika, lotus, etc. They added color to their buildings by using red sandstone. Yellow sandstone or marble was used to show off the color of the red sandstone. The most magnificent building constructed in this period was the Qutub Minar. This tapering tower, originally 71.4 meter high, started by Qutbuddin Aibak and completed by Iltutmish, is unique in the use of red and white sandstone and marble. Its projected balconies are also a special feature of the monument. Fact file. There are number of legends related to the Qutub Minar. Some believe that the monument was actually built by Prithviraj Chauhan so that his daughter could see the sacred river Yamuna during her daily prayers. Alauddin Khalji, another Delhi Sultan, built a new capital at Siri, a few kilometers away from the site around the Qutub Minar. The Tughlaq rulers built the huge palace fortress complex called Tughlaqabad. Feroz Tughlaq built a pleasure resort in Hauz Khas, which had a huge lake around it. He also built a new fort in a place which is now called the Kotla. The Lodi Sultans added a special touch to their architecture by placing their tombs in the midst of huge gardens. The Lodi Garden in New Delhi is a fine example of this style. Thus, under the Delhi Sultans, an intermingling of the Turkish and the local Indian art and architectural styles gave rise to a unique form of architecture and building activity. The regional kingdoms. The regional kingdoms were also influenced by the Indo-Islamic style of architecture. Ahmad Shah of Gujarat founded Ahmedabad and decorated it with beautiful structures. The rulers of Malwa built numerous structures at Mandu. Some of these are the Jama Masjid, the Hindola Mahal, the Ashrafi Mahal, and the Jahaz Mahal. The Ilyas Shahi and Hussain Shahi rulers of Bengal and the Sharqi rulers of Jaunpur also constructed numerous buildings based on the Indo-Islamic style. Ibrahim Shah Sharqi built the Atala Masjid at Jaunpur. The Adina Masjid and the Dakhil Darwaza are famous structures in Bengal. Baulis or step wells served a very important purpose. They are found mostly in areas with less rainfall. They were constructed to preserve rainwater for all to draw water from it during the dry season. Baulis prove that rainwater harvesting was familiar to the people of medieval times. Rajaon ki Bauli is believed to have been built by Daulat Khan during the reign of Sikandar Lodi in 1516. The Bauli was used by masons for some time, hence it got its name as Rajaon ki Bauli. Another famous one is Gandak ki Bauli. These are the images of Rajaon ki Bauli. Gandak ki Bauli, a step well, was built by Iltutmish for the Saint Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki. Rajput kingdoms. The rulers of the small kingdoms in the Rajputana region built many forts. The Mehrangarh fort in Jodhpur and the fort at Chittor are massive structures. Rana Kumbha of Mewar built the famous Victory Tower at Chittor. Vijayanagar. The capital of the Vijayanagar Empire was Hampi. It has beautiful buildings, especially temples. The Vitthal Swami Temple, the Virupaksh Temple and the Hazara Rama Temple are fine specimens of temple architecture under the Vijayanagar rulers. Beautiful sculptures were carved on the walls of these temples. Bahmani Kingdom. The Bahmani Sultans built numerous mosques, madrasas and libraries. Their most famous monument are the Jama Masjid at Gulbarg, the Madrasa of Mahmud Gawan and his tomb at Bidar. The Gol Gumbaz at Bijapur was built by the Bijapuri rulers, the successors of the Bahmanis. It has many features borrowed from the architectural style of the Bahmanis. This is the picture of Gol Gumbaz, Bijapur. In the loop, Bimal Patel is one of the preferred architects in India who has more than 35 years of experience in architecture, designing, urban planning and urban design. The Mughal period. All the great Mughals were great builders. The chief characteristic of Mughal architecture are use of pure white marble and sandstone, gold jewelry, diamond inlay work, paintings on wall, natural scenery, birds and beasts are painted, beautiful gardens were laid around the tombs, bell-shaped domes and minarets, large gateways. Babur. Babur expressed his interest in planning and laying out formal gardens. The formal gardens that were placed with rectangular walled enclosures and divided into 4 quarters by artificial channels were called Chahar Bagh, that is 4 garden. The main features of Mughal Chahar Bagh gardens are as follows. They were planned and laid formally. These gardens were placed within rectangular walled enclosures. They were divided into four quarters by artificial channels or running water. They were called Chahar Bagh because of their symmetrical division into quarters. Some of the most beautiful Chahar Baghs were constructed by Jahangir and Shah Jahan in Kashmir, Agra, and Delhi. Few important Mughal gardens have survived till date, like Shalimar Bagh at Lahore and Srinagar, Nishant Bagh in Srinagar, Kabul Bagh in Panipat, and the Pinjore Garden in Punjab. Humayun. Humayun was not able to build many buildings. Humayun's tomb in Delhi was constructed by his widow Hamida Banu Begum. It was built in Persian method of construction. The building was constructed with red sandstone edged with white marble, and the use of stone and marble shows Indian influence. Its construction started in 1564 and it took 8 years to be completed. The central towering dome and the tall gateway Pishtak became important aspects of Mughal architecture. This is the picture of Humayun's tomb at Delhi. First visible in Humayun's tomb, it was placed in the center of a huge formal Chahar Bagh and built in the tradition known as Eight Paradises, Hasht Bihisht, a central hall surrounded by 8 rooms. The Surs. The Sur dynasty gave a new impetus to architecture. Sher Shah's mausoleum at Sasaram, Bihar is situated in the middle of a lake. It has a huge dome. The Purana Killa, Old Fort at Delhi, is also considered an architectural marvel. This is the picture of Old Fort. The Kala-e-Kunha Masjid and the Sher Mandal are two beautiful structures in this fort complex. Akbar. Akbar's reign can be taken as the formative period of Mughal architecture. It represents the finest example of the fusion of Indo-Islamic architecture. The architecture of the reign of Akbar represents the growth of indigenous techniques and a selective use of the architectural features of other countries. The buildings mainly used red sandstone as the building material. One of the earliest building projects of Akbar's reign was the construction of the Agra Fort, a fortress palace. Its massive walls and battlements gave an effect of great power inside the fort. Akbar had built many structures in the Bengal and Gujarat styles. Most of these, except the Jahangiri Mahal, were demolished by Shah Jahan. Today, the Delhi Gate of the fort and the Jahangiri Mahal are the only representative buildings of Akbar's reign. Akbar also built a new capital at Sikri, nearly 40 kilometers west of Agra. The new capital was named Fatehpur. Important buildings of the capital included the tomb of Salim Chishti, Jami Masjid, Jodhabai's palace, Panch Mahal, and Diwan-e-Aam, a rectangular courtyard surrounded by colonnades. All the buildings were built in characteristic rich red sandstone. The pillars, lintels, brackets, tiles, and posts were cut from local rocks and assembled with the use of mortar. This is the picture of Dargah of Salim Chishti. In 1596, Akbar built a victory gate, the Buland Darwaza, to commemorate his conquest of Gujarat. It was built in red and yellow sandstone with white marble inlay work. In the span of the arches, the entrance has been formed by the huge central arch, which is crowned by an array of domed kiosks. This is the picture of Buland Darwaza, Fatehpur Sikri. Jahangir. During Jahangir's reign, some new and distinctive features were adopted in architecture, namely the use of marble in place of red sandstone, the dome structure. The dome assumed more shape, the use of semi-precious stones in inlay work called pietra dura. The major building that was completed in this period was the tomb of Akbar at Sikandra near Agra. Another noteworthy monument is the tomb of Itmad-ud-Daula, the father of Nur Jahan. It was the first structure to be built entirely in marble. This is the picture of tomb of Itmad-ud-Daula. Let's look at the case study of Shah Jahan's patronage of architecture. Amongst the Mughal emperors, Shah Jahan is remembered for his architectural achievements. With his accession to the throne, the golden age of Mughal architecture began. He built the Taj Mahal at Agra, Musammam Bridge at Agra Fort, Shah Jahanabad, Red Fort, Jama Masjid at Delhi, and Jahangir's tomb at Lahore. This is the picture of Red Fort, Delhi. Shah Jahan's audience halls were specially constructed to resemble a mosque. The pedestal on which the throne was placed was called Qibla, the direction faced by Muslims at prayer. These architectural features also suggested the idea of a king as a representative of the god. Shah Jahan built the largest Muslim sanctuary in India, the Jama Masjid at Delhi. It was constructed in the 17th century and is an excellent example of an Indian mosque. Aurangzeb built the Pearl Mosque inside the Red Fort complex. Behind the emperor's throne at the Red Fort complex were a series of inlays that depicted the legendary Greek god Orpheus playing the flute. It was believed that Orpheus' music could calm even ferocious beasts. The craftsmen used a special skill called pietra dura for inlaying these precious and semi-precious stones in white marble. Marble was the favorite building material of Shah Jahan. In other Mughal buildings of the 16th and 17th century, the materials used are glazed tile, white marble, sandstone, wood joinery, mosaic, stucco carvings, and gemstones. Shah Jahan's interest in these materials and structures was to communicate how the king dispensed justice irrespective of one being high or low. All were equal before the emperor and all coexisted together and lived in harmony. Recently, on the other side of the Yamuna, a garden complex called Mahtab Bagh or Moonlight Garden has been discovered. It belonged to the nobility and had been constructed during Shah Jahan's time. The nobility had constructed similar homes on the banks of river Yamuna at Agra, Shah Jahan's capital. These homes were also set in the midst of Chahar Bagh garden format. However, historians call these gardens as riverfront garden. The dwelling was not located in the middle of the garden complex but at one of the edge close to the banks of the river. Remember, the Red Fort complex at Delhi is also on the banks of river Yamuna. Hotel is also set on the banks of Yamuna River with an eightfold garden, reflecting pools and fountains in front. It is a white marble mausoleum in remembrance of his beloved wife Mumtaz Mahal. It took 22 years to build this monument. Scholars view this monument of great beauty as representative of world civilization and of tolerance. Shah Jahan developed his architectural form as a means to control the access that nobles had to the river. Shah Jahan had also placed the peacock throne in Diwan-e-Am of Red Fort at Delhi. The famous Kohinoor diamond was placed in the throne. This diamond was plundered from Lahore by Nadir Shah during his raids in the 18th century. At present, it is preserved in the museum in London. The city built near Delhi called Shah Jahanabad was meant to be his new capital. It also commanded the riverfront view. Shah Jahan gave access to the river only to especially favored nobles like his eldest son Dara Shikoh. Other nobles were required to construct their home away from the Yamuna front. The mausoleum, mosque and fortress palaces built by him are a standing proof of this building style. Shah Jahan also built double dome, recessed archways and a rectangular front in some of his monuments. There can be seen a perfect balance between all the parts of a monument of his times. This is particularly true of a palace, fortress, the Red Fort at Delhi and Taj Mahal at Agra. Aurangzeb. Architectural innovation stopped under Aurangzeb. Most of his buildings were mere copies of the earlier ones. They also lacked the sense of proportion and an attention to detail, which characterize the buildings of Shah Jahan. The tomb of Rabia Dorani at Aurangabad is a poor imitation of the Taj Mahal. The Badshahi Masjid at Lahore was also completed during Aurangzeb's reign. The 18th century. There was a degeneration in architecture during this period. The most famous monument built during the reign of the later Mughal is the tomb of Safdarjung in Delhi. The tomb is located in the middle of a garden and has a single dome. Think smarter. Think of any three ancient Indian techniques we must bring back to build our sustainable homes today. The Nawabs of Lucknow built many imambaras. The Bada Imambara was built by Nawab Asafuddaulah in 1784. The Chota Imambara and the Rumi Darwaza are the other monuments in Lucknow. The Nawabs of Bengal built the Katra Masjid and the Chowk Masjid. Savai Raja Jai Singh of Amber built astronomical observatories at many places. The monuments of the Kingdom of Mysore include the Darya Daulat Palace, the Gumbad-e-Ala and the Jama Masjid. Value and life skills. Historical monuments are part of our cultural heritage and represent the style of Indian art and culture. However, some people deface, disfigure, and inscribe their names, place, or other symbols on them. Are you in favor in taking steps against such type of people? Recapitulation. The establishment of the Delhi Sultanate towards the beginning of the 13th century marked a new phase in the cultural development of India. The Delhi Sultans introduced arch and dome in India. They introduced geometrical and floral designs and verses from Quran. The most magnificent building made by the Turks was Qutub Minar. Regional kingdoms also contributed to the development of architecture. Many monuments were constructed in Gujarat, Malwa, Bengal, Jaunpur, Rajputana, and in Hampi, Gulbarg, and Bidar. The Mughal period witnessed further developments in architecture. The Indo-Islamic style of architecture was further improved. The buildings at Fatehpur Sikri are very beautiful. After Shah Jahan, building activity entered a period of decline. Thank you, class. Let's meet again in the next chapter.